It's understandable. I remember years ago there was a quote I heard, and I never really understood what it meant. They said, you know, what's the most powerful drug in the world? What's the drug that can make people go to war, can make people hate, can make people love, can make people commit suicide, can make people do anything? And the most powerful drug in the world are words. And people's ability to convey a message or words are really what make us react to situations and things. And I have to be very frank about it. Last night I went to bed thinking to myself how strange it was. And I didn't sleep well last night because it's been a terrible weekend of all of the shenanigans that have gone on. And I thought to myself how funny it is that quote came back to me that in Manhattan Beach you've got 33,000 people going to bed.
No, 48,000.
No, it's 33. I've heard both figures, so I'm going to go with the low one. I'm being conservative.
Okay.
I've heard 48, but
more
it's
than that.
yeah. The fire department in Manhattan Beach tells me it's 33, so I'm going to use their number. You know, 33,000 people in Manhattan Beach went to bed last night. Will go to bed tonight with a total staffing of 9 for fire suppression. In El Segundo, a total population of 15,000 people will go to bed with a fire suppression staff of 17. That's less than half the population, more than twice the number of firefighters. And the reason I'm making the point is I don't think the discussion is over whether one piece of equipment is going to have 2 or 3. I certainly wouldn't want to discuss with the police chief whether or not the K-9 unit should have 1 officer or 2 officers. I thought about it a great deal, and I thought to myself, well, I'd heard from an elderly woman who said she had given her keys to her neighbors, that if there's a fire, she wants them to come rescue her because she understands there's not enough people to come in and rescue her because of the quote-unquote cuts in the number of firefighters available. When we took up the issue of staffing 2 years ago with the fire department, we were in the acting program. The acting program and the president of the Firefighters Association previously had ridden on that engine with 3 members. It had gone down to that. Not always the staffing level expectation was higher, but it was going down to that. You were going down to less than 16, less than 15 on total duty, on total staff at any time. When we brought back the rank for rank, there was an expectation that if you increase the overtime budget dramatically, then people are going to be opposed to it and you're going to have problems with the community. So the way that you do that is you get a minimal staffing amount. In other words, your minimum staffing standards will not go below 17, that you will always maintain a staff of 17.3. And that 0.3 position is the person who's going to be that 4th man on the engine. And I thought to myself, in the circumstance that we have raised the minimal staffing, that we have not laid off or fired anybody from the fire department, how it is that 15,000 people will go to bed. You know, you have 2,000 signatures, I've heard. I bet you probably scared more than 2,000 people, probably 10,000 people. And I'm really glad I didn't have a house for sale in the city last weekend, because after some of the firefighters putting in 20 years in this city, saving lives, servicing this community, they have done more damage to the union has done more damage to the reputation of that department, to the battalion chiefs who run it, and the fire chief, and the credibility of our city to retain businesses, to make residents feel safe, and let them know they can depend on those emergency services, then you have built a good rapport in the last 20 years. That was just ruined over the weekend because we were flooded, and I can speak for myself with people who thought that there was 3 men available to respond to a call. And I, looked at the ad and said, well, if everything in this ad were true, I would sign your petition. I would have signed it. This ad is absolutely incorrect and absolutely misleading. Not a little bit, a lot. Almost every city in here does not staff 4 people in every engine. El Segundo has 3. We staff 2 with 4 and 1 with 3 because it goes with the paramedics or the 2 and the battalion chief. And I'm not going to belabor the point. The bottom line for me is that internally in the department, you can determine how many people will respond to a particular situation. And I'll take an example. Hawthorne. Hawthorne has 3 departments, or 3 stations. 2 of them have 3 on an engine. Now, why in this ad says that all surrounding cities, and it names Hawthorne, has 4 to an engine, and earlier the gentleman, I believe it was, Bulgardi's son, he's a great man. He's still on the city council in Culver City. Culver City has a population many times larger than El Segundo, and Culver City staffs 18 people. And they, like a lot of departments, try to put a fourth man when possible on their engines through a volunteer program or a certified EMT program, like a lot of other cities. What is being proposed and talked about is not what was agreed to by the union 2 years ago. And I guess I'm in the position that I'm not qualified. I'm not a firefighter. Councilman Gordon, you're not a firefighter. I'm not qualified to determine what the level of staffing should be on each piece of equipment in that fire department. I'm not qualified to make that decision. I have never made that decision, and I've never advocated that you have less than 4 on any piece of equipment. Never done it. The department itself internally determines what are the proper or appropriate staffing levels. That's how the system works. And I think the city is going through a very painful process, quite frankly, that the first time in the 75-year history of this city that I'm aware of, we've got council members who are circumventing the legal established process of how do you determine these things. Now, if the fire chief is not capable of providing that protection, if his opinion has no value to you, I'd be happy to discuss your opinion of retaining the fire chief. But as long as we have a fire chief who's making those determinations, as long as we have battalion chiefs on the scene, we have to have a cohesive working organization. And I just want to mention one other point in here that's amazing to me. And by the way, the gentleman for the firefighter from Culver City said he was surprised, and I wrote it down because I quoted it exactly, that we have only 3 men on every engine. We do not in El Segundo have 3 people in every engine. Culver City does not have 4 people in every engine. You know, the craziness of this, it says in the event of a paramedic engine 31 is out working on emergency and a situation happens, our residential fire engine will have to respond from station 1 alone with only 3 firefighters. Not true. Not true. The other engine can roll. And then it talks about response times and everything else. And so I just want to make the statement that I think we have great firefighters in this community. I think they do a great job. I will differ with the gentleman who confronted me, and I had a nice discussion this weekend that he can't afford to live in El Segundo, yet he flies an airplane to work. I find that extremely curious. As far as I'm concerned, if the union says this is not an overtime issue and that they support hiring those people, I'm going to ask the union if you're willing to make available to your members in that department and to the public your proposal to this city and your advocacy to this city, because people are going to find out it's not what you're saying. And I think that's a very, very critical shoe that has to drop in order for people to know the truth. The truth is, in El Segundo, we're not cutting positions. The minimal staffing standard has not been decreased. And internally, there's numerous alternatives, and I don't think it's my position. I'm not so arrogant as to believe that I can determine how the fire chief is going to staff the department. My wife was told that the fire chief doesn't agree with the council, that the council imposed this. I never discussed it. I never told the fire chief, go and do this. But my wife was told that at the supermarket. Somebody came and knocked on our door and told us the concept of alarming people and frightening them that their houses are going to burn down, that they don't have protection, is just, to me, unbelievable that anybody would do that, and especially in the position of not themselves advocating at the time or before. Remember, it's 17.3. That .3 guy, by the way, is to fill that 4th seat. There has not been support from the union to fill that guy. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, again, if what was true in here, I would sign this as well. But the more I've looked into it, is the more I'm finding out that people have been terribly misled. Names are being dragged through the mud. And in order to get beyond this, we need to have our fire chief in charge of the fire department and making those decisions. And I am not willing, and there's no question the fire department has the most capable union head who masters the numbers very well and is a very articulate guy, but I'm not willing to put the fire chief's badge on him. The fire chief is the one who determines the staffing levels. The battalion chief is the one who makes that determination. If those collectively, those gentlemen have over 100 years experience in firefighting. If they're wrong, then that's another problem that better be addressed. But I'm tired of people saying that the council is determining how many people are going to be on what engine, and Councilman Gordon trying to go around the process, around 4 council members who voted not to bring the subject up again, to try and negotiate with the chief, just like you were doing today, putting him on the spot, and not abiding by the democratic process in this city, which allows the council members to liaison with the chief in those types of decisions. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm very frustrated. It is not a discussion of whether or not you have 4 people on that engine. The question is, Do you want to hire extra people, or do you want to have more overtime? That's got to come out. And whether or not the union's willing to show the public what their proposal is to the city and has been in years past, because I think that's the critical element here that's missing.
Liam, excuse me. One of the most appropriate quotes that you made tonight that words are like dope. And in that case, I would say on this dais, you're one of the biggest dope pushers because you've used the most words.